Welcome everyone to the SciManDan podcast. It's episode 23. How you're doing? Hope you're well. Look, he's joining us again. He is back again. He's not missing any weeks this time. The man who knows more about knuckleballs than Cristiano Ronaldo himself. It's Cats. How you doing, buddy? Hey, there's his intro.
I never know whether I should speak while the intro is playing or let it ring out. Because it is masterful, you know.
I know how much you love it.
Every time I hear that, I do feel 10 times more manly.
Yeah. That's why I play it. Anyway, how you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, really good. It's been a very interesting week. This last video I put out.
It has, yeah. So
everyone.
If you weren't here in the last podcast, and if you don't know, a pretty prominent flat earther has flipped and has come on the globe side, which is pretty rare, isn't it? I'm actually I think I'm gonna put one out about it, get a bit more exposure next Friday, I think. But they've not reacted well, have they? The flat earthers, they're not happy.
They aren't. It's all over. But on the back of it, a bit of breaking news here. I promised I'm not going to mention any names, so I won't mention any names. But
okay.
I've been contacted by two other flat earthers,
right?
Not prominent in the community, but well known in terms of being on channels and stuff.
Right.
Who now doubt the Earth is flat as well because of recent events.
Because of this photo.
Because of this photo and the way that it's been analysed by not one but two flat earthers.
Wow.
To show that there's dropped. So making inroads.
Yeah, that's excellent news. Excellent news. So we'll keep an eye on that. Definitely keep an eye on that. But we got our eyes on something else today. So those of you that tuned in for, I think it was episode 16 or 17, we did the science of red dwarf. Spanners and Matt are back. How you doing, gents? You all right? Spanners, you good?
I'm all right, Dan. I have to say I've gone the other way since we've last
chatted.
Shut
up.
I've become disenchanted with globe Earth, and I've gone the other way.
Have you? Right. Good. That's very good. Very good. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. I'm just in New York, living my life and ignoring Spanners as much as possible.
Yeah, good idea. Anyway, guys, it was very well received, the Red Dwarf episode. There was a call for you guys to come back, so you are back. And this time we're doing the science of Star Trek. The science of Star Trek, aren't we?
Oh my goodness! When you sent the show notes over, Dan, I was like a bit scared because it felt like homework with a big PDF document. But as it opened up, I was like, "Oh my god, my life has been homework for this episode."
Yeah, I know. We'll get into that a little bit more about how much we've seen. So, Cats, are you a Trekker?
You know, I am. Not so much the original series, but I do like. I'm probably one of the rare people that actually quite likes Discovery. I don't know. I do, and I like Deep Space Nine. The end of Deep Space Nine, where it got into the war and the battle, got quite. Everyone was laughing at me because I said I like Discovery.
UN.
Should I go now?
Space, Cats. That's no. I mean, social workers in space for TNG was enough, but when it got to like United Nations or the peace accord on that planet, like, why have I forgotten the name, Dan?
I don't know.
Bajor.
Listen. I'm quite rare. I've seen The Next Generation. I've seen all of them, and I loved it. Didn't really watch much of the original series. I watched a bit of Voyager when it was out, a tiny bit of Deep Space Nine, mainly when Worf was on it. But other than that, and Picard, obviously, and the movies.
Yeah.
Other than that, not a huge amount.
I might upset some people in that my absolute favourite Star Trek series is Voyager. And that's because I really appreciated the seasons long arc and how there was like a beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. I love that. And Enterprise kind of picked that up. So not only do I annoy people by saying Voyager was the best Star Trek series, Archer is the Star Trek captain as well. He's absolutely the best Star Trek captain.
But we're not going to get into a Star Trek captain debate because that's going to last forever. Matt, what about you? How many have you seen? Have you seen all of them?
No, not even close.
Okay.
I'm an OG Star Trek person in that when I was a kid, it was the original Star Trek that was on that we watched all the time. And then all of the stuff that you're talking about happened when I was away in college and sometimes without TV. But I saw a reasonable number of the Picard ones when they first came out. We watched some of it and then I was off and gone. Seen most of the movies, and of course I watched Picard because we did the show on that for the first season. So I'm going to be the voice of ancient wisdom on the show.
Okay, good stuff. Katz, did you see Picard?
Yeah, I quite like Picard. It had its moments that I thought was a bit, how can I put it? Not very sci-fi, a bit social justice-y, whatnot. But as overall, yeah, got a thumbs up. I'd watch it again.
Okay, good. So let's all agree we're looking forward to season 2 on that one. So the premise is the same. We're gonna chat about some of the sciences in Star Trek. We're going to discuss how plausible they could be, whilst reminiscing about the shows as well. And we're going to start with something that we touched on with Red Dwarf. So, Katz, we spoke quite in depth about the possibility of Rimmer and the hologram and the hard light and stuff like that in Red Dwarf. And we're going to start with the holodecks for Star Trek. So, Katz, first off, the holodecks. I mean, we've got holograms already, but how far can we progress that to get something like a holodeck?
Well, the answer is I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. It just seems incredible. I would love one though. I'm going to defer to the experts for that because I am totally under research for that.
Okay,
I don't know.
Go on, Spanners.
So I think the term holodeck is slightly misleading.
Okay.
So we're used to holograms, but really what's happening on the holodeck is that things are being materialized and dematerialized in real time.
Right.
So it's more like the replicator technology in the holodeck, isn't it, than say just pure light like Rimmer.
Okay. Yeah. So you're saying they've named it poorly. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the nomenclature is incorrect, but the concept is absolutely fantastic because what you've basically got is the ultimate VR optic set. So you're seeing everything as you would in the real version of it, and we're all starting to experience that in VR and virtual reality now. The thing that the materialized particles brings us is like a haptic feedback. It's like the ultimate haptic feedback, isn't it? So you can touch everything. So had they said, oh, it's a light source, but we've got some particle in the air that stimulates your fingertips so it feels like touch. I don't think they did that. I think it's meant to be, if you touch a tree, that tree has been materialized.
Right. I see. Matt?
Yeah, well, I'm going to bring my experience with racing to this. I went to a VR racing place and they had 2 and 3 degree freedom simulators.
Okay.
And I did an interview with the founder of it. So yeah, 2 degrees and then 3 degrees. And he said that what they do is they take the information from the car suspension and then they have motors that drive the rig different directions. But what they spend a lot of time talking about is how your body senses that motion and translates it into something it recognizes from the visual stimuli.
Okay.
So we're moving the body this way and you think you're decelerating, but really you're being lifted up from the back.
Right.
You move the body.
Okay.
So it's almost like brain hacking, if you will. So if you ask me, a holodeck where they replicate materials instantly, and a tree is a tree, but they've just essentially 3D printed it in a nanosecond for you. I'm not sure I would buy that.
Okay.
But where they have materials and haptic feedback, and then they hack your brain to make you think you've touched a tree, I 100% would buy that technology will eventually exist.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. The only thing I can even relate it to is, we spoke about the VR table tennis last time, Spanners. So what I was playing it one day, and every time you hit the ball, there's a tiny little vibration in the controller, and it feels like you're hitting the ball. And one day the controller broke because I messed up the shot and I hit the sofa or something, the controller, and it stopped vibrating. As soon as I didn't feel that vibration when I hit the ball, I was rubbish. I couldn't deal with it. It was going all over the place.
Oh man, we have this argument with sim racing where if you're going through a corner, the wheel suddenly becomes really heavy. And then when you have an understeer or oversteer moment or lose traction, the wheel suddenly goes light to simulate that. And when you hit a curb, it obviously vibrates as well. And Matt, you recently had a failure with your steering wheel where that disappeared. It's a totally different experience.
Yeah, you have no... It's amazing how much information you collect from your body, even in a simulation like that. And so the wheel and your fingertips are very sensitive. A lot of information gets transmitted that way. But it's also, and people will tell you, like, they pull on the wheels, they lean back and forth because your brain really does get fooled. And the technology is there to completely fool your brain, I would say.
We're getting to the point of Ready Player One technology, aren't we? With the full haptic suit. So when he got kicked in the nuts, he felt that fully through his body. We're experimenting at the moment. We're talking about putting vibrating pads in our race seats. They're called butt kickers, and they simulate, G-force as well as you're moving. But in Star Trek, in the holosuite, you're expected to believe, I think, that it all just is exactly like real life. And if we remember that this is kind of a 90s technology, I'm sure if they could start again with what we've got now, they would probably do something more what Matt is saying, which is you sit in a chair and the world gets beamed like a massive online multiplayer game. You can all sit in chairs and hook up and link up.
Yeah, because there was a risk. There was a risk, wasn't there? Like if safety was off, you could be killed, you could be hurt inside the holodecks. And I don't know if you remember an episode where I can't remember who said it, but they said to the ship's computer, create a villain in the holodeck that could outsmart Data.
Moriarty,
and it created Moriarty, and then he could leave the holodeck, couldn't he? Somehow.
Yeah, because they said not could beat Sherlock Holmes. They said could beat Commander Data.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, those safety protocols were absolutely rats, weren't they, on Star Trek?
Okay, so are we saying then that holodecks, a version of holodecks, is a possibility in the future? Not necessarily the one on Star Trek, though.
For all practical purposes of what you could do, yes. But I think just the application, they went for light at the time. And I think that was fair at the time, whereas now they wouldn't do it like that. But what they did misrepresent is what people would use it for. Seth MacFarlane got it absolutely correct on the Orville. It would all be sex programs.
That reminds me, because you said that earlier, and it reminds me of that episode where, who's the guy who plays Murdoch in A-Team?
Oh, Barclay in Star Trek.
Yeah, because he keeps going to holodeck with and creating Troy, doesn't he? Like going to as if they're having a relationship or something, doesn't he? Because he's like infatuated with her.
I'm just looking that up now for you. Reginald Barclay.
That's him.
I can't find the actor's name. It's Dwight Schultz.
That's it. Yeah. So he obviously used it for.
And everyone would. That is literally what every crew member would do. And there would be a big kind of, how do you delete your holodeck history? There would be an incognito holodeck mode.
Yeah. But tell me if I'm wrong, though. Riker would go in there just to step over chairs to sit on them.
Ron stepping over chair protocol.
Brilliant. Okay, right. So we're giving that one a possibility, definitely. Right, we'll move on. Then. Transporters. Now, Cats. The transporter is supposed to be, so it's supposed to completely disassemble you, isn't it? Atom by atom. Send you, is it through subspace or something, and then reassemble you afterwards? Are we? My immediate response to that is complete nonsense. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, we have hit the technology where we can send information from one subatomic particle to another quite some distance away, haven't we?
Yeah.
But to be able to do, but that's not even sending the matter itself.
No.
It's just coordinating information from one to another. And to be able to coordinate that with trillions and trillions of atoms and then retain the consciousness and the memory of the individual, I think it's a bit of a step too far.
Yeah.
Myself.
Yeah, I think you're right. Matt.
Well, this is where my ancient wisdom comes in, because if you look up what a transporter really is, it converts you to an energy pattern, and then you're reassembled according to that pattern.
Yeah.
On the other side. So really what it is a telephone, which would take sound waves, convert them to an energy pattern of electricity, and then recreate them on the other end. So this is the scientific model that they use. And I'm going to go with, it's highly implausible that it would work like that. And when I say highly implausible, I'm saying, no, I don't think it could work like that at all. The more interesting variation of it, I think Katz was sort of bringing it up in a bit, would be using something like quantum entanglement to recreate the information at whatever distance but it would require more or less permanent disassembly at the point of embarkation. Yeah. Which brings up a whole host of other interesting problems.
We'd need Jim Al-Khalili for that one, with Cats, for the quantum entanglement. Because don't they say that once you're reassembled, it's almost like a different version of you. Is that what they say in the series?
What, in Star Trek?
Yeah, once you're reassembled once you've been transported, it's not the same matter that is you that it was before.
Okay, so I think in Star Trek, you are definitely still you when you get transported to the other end.
Okay.
Like, there's never any question that it's your clone. The only time that came up was with Riker being split, and his pattern got split. So he got reproduced 2 times. One lived a normal life on Star Trek, and one was stranded on the planet and went down a different path and was called himself Tom.
Yeah.
So in that way, they say, okay, when you transport, that is just like you taking a train really quickly from one place to another. So what Matt was describing there was a fax. You're sending a fax of yourself to the other end. So if you were to take it as possible to start with, I think the energy levels required are like phenomenal, even to move one particle or even to copy like a few particles and have that information go to another place. But let's take that as given, if you'll allow me, and say it is possible. I have already made my wife agree to never be teleported. So I feel so strongly about this that she doesn't understand why I feel strongly about it, but she has vowed to me she will never make use of transporter technology, because I believe that once you are disassembled on the transporter pad, you're dead. You just died there and then.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens at the other end, they've just built a biological creature and really clever managed to put your memories and patterns in there from your brain. But if you were a religious person, so let's say you are a Christian, you believe in the Christian God, at the point at which you disassemble on the transporter pad, you then develop a pair of angel wings and float off to heaven. And then that thing that's carried on there, that's something else entirely. So I've said to my wife, if she does a transporter, that is the end of our relationship. I will have a funeral for her, and I will have nothing to do with the new zombie clone.
Okay, that's dangerous territory, isn't it? But they kind of went a step further in Picard, didn't they? Because it was almost like they walked through something. They just walked through a gate, didn't they? And then all of a sudden they were wherever they wanted to walk. It was like a lot quicker than it was in Next Generation.
But it also sort of begs the question, I think they were stuck with what they started with.
Yeah.
From a scientific model. But given the fact they have warp drives and they can bend space, why would you just not do that instead? It seems like, you've already got all the tools there. Why would you have to take people apart, make them an energy pattern, and put them back together when you could just simply bend space so you could walk from the transporter deck right to whatever the other end of that space is?
Then you need some dilithium crystals in your pocket, wouldn't you?
And I'm just thinking about a future time and a future Spanners and a future SciManDan. I would be there outside transporter pads with placards saying, transporters are murder. Stop suicide booths now. And you'd be talking about the transporter conspiracists and doing tests and inviting me on your show.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, hell, I didn't think of that. All right, let's put transporters down to an absolute extremely unlikely. Yeah, not at all. Well, Matt, you mentioned warp drive, so let's move on to that. So warp drive technology, you said it's the ability to bend the space behind the ship, isn't it? And it can, in effect, travel huge distances in a smaller time scale than you normally would be able to. Powered by, I believe, dilithium crystals, and is it antimatter and matter kind of collisions? So what's the you know the science that behind that, Katz, weren't you? What's going on there?
Well, certainly when we teach at A-level antimatter and matter, when they collide, so for example, a positron and a beta particle, like an electron and an anti-electron, they annihilate. Now, the problem with that for me is when they annihilate, we have to bring in the law of conservation of momentum. So you could have an electron here, a positron there traveling towards each other, and they've got the same mass, the same speed, so there's no overall momentum. And when they annihilate and create pure energy, that energy, to conserve the fact there's no momentum, is produced in the form of gamma rays, but at 180 degrees. So you're getting kind of jets of energy coming off in 2 different directions to conserve momentum, which isn't going to move something because you're conserving momentum.
Yeah.
But obviously it's going to create an awful lot of energy, and whether heat then could be, you know, I don't know how they use that energy.
Is that how they then bend space? I don't know. I don't know the exact science behind what they've planned.
I think the idea in this series, at least, is that the dilithium crystals act sort of like a regulator of the energy you create from the matter-antimatter.
I see. Got you. Okay. So like sort of control rods in a nuclear power station sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, they can. They talk about it, don't they? They say, you know, warp 9 or warp 8 or whatever, and they can travel light years in a couple of hours. Or there is still a time. You know, they can't go straight across the galaxy in a few hours. That would still take a few days, wouldn't it? There's not like an ultimate speed.
So what they've really done with warp drive and faster than light travel, they haven't really made themselves go faster. They've shrunk the galaxy.
Yeah.
Enough that you can have the politics between different solar systems, Matt.
Yeah, well, if you think about a black hole, say, and a gravity well, if you think about space as a bounded three-dimensional object, let's call it a balloon. You put a dot on one side, you put a dot on the other side, you draw the line all the way around, that's a long distance. But if you push them together, then suddenly they're very, very, very much closer. And I think as far as a warp drive is concerned, technically that's what it's doing. You're using gravity, or you're using this energy to manipulate gravity and bend space, 2 different points in space really close together, but there's still going to be a travel time to get from the one point to the other. Sure. It's not instantaneous.
Okay, so are we saying then that the theory behind it is certainly plausible, but the technology required is non-existent and probably won't be?
So do we buy, and it sounds like Katz has got the biggest scientific brain here, do we accept that the speed limit of the universe is the speed of light? So we can't break the speed of light. We have to find some way to make a shortcut.
Not quite. You can't travel through space at the speed of light, but space itself can expand faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
But there was just this conversation reminded me now, there was a story I heard last year, was it? And somebody it was the University of Foreman, beginning with a G, but I can't remember what it was, had actually applied the proper laws of physics to show how if you could distort the space-time around you, you could create a bubble, a small bubble of the universe in which all the normal laws of physics apply. So you're not traveling through that bubble any faster than the speed of light, but around it, you're contracting space, or whatever, faster than light will be able to travel through it, and you sort of like propel through it, but using proper established laws of physics. So I do know that this is possible, but I can't remember the fine details.
Dan, how many laws of physics can a sci-fi show break before you get fed up? I mean, we've got to accept that they will break some.
I don't know, because if it depends on who's watching. It depends on the audience, doesn't it? Because if you're a layman and you watch it, but they're talking scientifically, you know, they talk about all the tachyon beams and stuff like that, and all the stuff, you'd buy that, wouldn't you? You'd buy that, and if you're not like me, I just watch it for the enjoyment.
Futurama did a really good on Star Trek about how they always use an analogy. So like Matt was saying, you know, one person will go, oh, it's the tachyon beams through the inverter field and the upscaling of the warp plasma bubble. And then the Matt person will come along and go, yeah, it's like a bubble. And then with a chopstick. And you go, right, okay, bubble and chopstick. I get that.
Okay. So Katz is saying then that arguably we're not breaking any laws of physics by trying to do this. But A, could we do it on a scale big enough to do it to get a ship through? And B, could we figure out the technology? That's the issue.
The energy needed would be absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as someone who's got zero expertise in engineering or bending space-time, but I will just say, I mean, how could you possibly power that, you know?
Okay.
I have no idea.
All right, warp drives is going in the bin with transporters and spanners. You happy with that?
Oh, yeah. No, the only other bit on that was time dilation. Like, they never, ever account for time dilation. So surely, like, they'd go on their mission, they'd come back, and everyone they know and love would be dead.
Yeah.
And they never mention
Well,
that.
we are going to talk about time a bit later. Yeah, go on, Matt.
And I'm going to have to argue with Spanners just out of reflex here. No, because we're bending actual space and time. So no, we're not taking it. We're not like in a black hole event horizon where time passes slowly for me, but faster for you. We're literally bending space
like a balloon and chopsticks. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's the whole continuum, Spanners. Come on. Right. Okay. So that's in the bin with transporters. Right. Next one is Data. So Data is a special character because what I loved so much about Data is, yes, he was an android, but he had such a desire to become human, didn't he? And that was sown through all the Next Generation, all of the films. But how possible is it to get an android that could look as close to human as Data and obviously be as clever?
Well, from an engineering point of view, my background is electronics and mechanical engineering. It doesn't feel that far away.
Okay.
And if we look at the data that they presented, they caked him in makeup to make him look deliberately a bit robotic and rubbish. And then they had a slightly fatter, older Data in Picard as well, but still the same caked on white makeup. To get that look of android, we're there. I'm pretty sure you could make a Data looking android. You could get it to move and walk. Some of those robots that are coming out of Japan look frightening. We've got robot police dogs coming up. By the way, that's not a good idea. We should shut that down. So I think it would be mostly the positronic brain. That's the thing that is out of reach just now.
I want to jump exactly on this and say that you already see how many videos a day on Twitter. Oh, look, so-and-so missing an arm, controlling fingers that look like fingers with their brain. And so I agree with you. I don't think we're that far off. And it was at Boston Robotics or Boston Dynamics.
Yeah.
With the robot dogs and the robot people. I mean, the New York City police already have a robot dog. It's too late.
Okay.
It's like we're in Black Mirror now.
All
territory.
right. All right, fair enough. But Katz, you're the biologist amongst us. How, if talking about what Matt was talking about there with like the limbs that had you had to move with electrical impulses, how good could we get that to almost match human reflexes and things like that, just using that sort of technology?
I think something like that would have better reflexes than and don't forget, if I'm going to get geeky about it, signals travel as electrical signals in the body. They also travel as electrical signals down a wire in a machine, but in the body it's interrupted by the synapse, where you get chemical diffusion traveling between the two. That actually slows down the signal traveling in an organism slower than an electrical signal. So even with that, I think it'll be far better. But the thing for me about this is, if I just look back to my own childhood, which wasn't that long ago, and the way technology has moved on since then, the speed that the technology is increasing is unbelievable. I'm almost frightened by what it's going to be in 200 years. We seem to be racing towards that moment.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Go on, Spanners.
Dan, so we're talking about the plausibility of just from a pure engineering point of view, could we make Data? But how about the plausibility of, would Data be accepted into a crew? Like, could you imagine a Data in 100 years slotting into a Navy unit and being accepted as a person? I think it would be surprisingly easy for us to do it. I mean, look at the way people treat pets and personify their pets.
Yeah, it depends on how human looking it was, I would say. But anything that has a human trait or human sort of personality, even if it didn't look human, you'd still be attached to that, wouldn't you, Matt?
Yeah, well, I would like to bring up Alien at this point as being another excellent examination of how a robotic crew member would function in a pragmatic environment. And I like what Kat said. To me, I think you're right, though. The issue isn't the rest of the body or its reflexes. The issue is, could you build a brain to run it that would fit inside there? But we have cloud computing now. So, I mean, maybe we don't even need the same kind of thing that we were imagining when the series was first out.
Small interjection here, Dan, because you mentioned Bishop from Alien.
Yeah.
Bishop from Alien is the reason that I cannot eat chicken pie.
Oh.
Chicken pie with the cream of chicken, because whenever I open it, it looks like the insides of Bishop.
Okay. Right. Chicken pies aside, the physical side of it, okay, I'm with you on that, and possibly the brain, but the actual artificial intelligence, the ability to think, create, hold a conversation, how far away are we from that? So, the real sophisticated artificial intelligence that Data showed.
I think we've already been subject to artificial intelligence and not realised it.
To that level?
No, not to that level. I'm just saying right now, I think you've been in chat rooms and spoken to bots. I think you've definitely interacted with bots on Twitter. You've definitely had an argument with a bot on Twitter, and you've definitely been in a game lobby where you've had a bot that you assumed was a human player.
Okay. All right. So we're saying if we build on that enough, definitely the AI could be good enough. Cool. Okay.
I think so.
All right. Okay. So Data, androids, holodecks are good. Warp drives and transporters are not. Right. We'll take a quick break. We're at the point we call Cat's Curiosity. So, guys, this is the part where Cats brings us a piece of science news that is interested in him over the last week, and then we're going to digest it. So, what do you got, buddy? And have you done that thing I set you?
No, I did something else because I forgot that you sent me that.
All right. All right. Okay. Give us your news, and then we'll set it properly.
Oh my God, I feel like I've messed up there. Well, what I wanted to do this week was do some science based on towers, seeing as it was the picture of Blackpool Tower that killed off FE from a few people. And as I was looking about the science of towers, I saw information like the Eiffel Tower is 15 centimeters taller in the summer than the winter because of thermal expansion, etc. And then that got linked to other articles about thermal energy, and I stumbled on about polar bears that caught my eye. And apparently, if a polar bear is sort of out in the open long enough for its fur to become the same temperature as the surroundings, a polar bear is practically invisible with an infrared camera. And it's all to do with the way that the fur is constructed. It's got these like holes and tubes inside, which cause a lot of boundaries for any reflection of infrared heat that's trying to come out. And scientists at, I forget which university now in America, have actually taken that and they've tried to model it using silk that they shoot out of a syringe that's mixed in with water. And when they make these threads of silk and water, when they shoot out of a syringe, they then freeze it when it comes out, and the water forms ice and it forms little holes in the silk, just like the polar bear fur.
Right.
And then they let it melt and the water escapes. And then they've woven it into a fabric which they can wrap around rabbits. And when they wrap it around a rabbit, like a Harry Potter cloak, the rabbit becomes completely invisible under infrared. But it doesn't, it maintains the temperature of the external surroundings. So you don't see a gap. You just...
Okay.
It's just invisible.
So this is purely invisible to infrared, not to the naked eye.
Oh yeah, if you tried to hide in the dark, you look a bit silly.
Yeah. Okay.
But just infrared.
Okay. All right.
So I'm already seeing this as a movie plot device for Ocean's 97.
So I have limited experience in infrared. It only comes from my time in the army and observing things at night through infrared goggles. And our clothes at the time was Combat 95. Those clothes would aid in infrared vision. So they would stop you being seen in infrared. And you could always tell when it was an artilleryman because they were so keen on having beautiful seams and lines in all their clothes and perfect ironed creases. And those iron creases would, of course, destroy the infrared properties of the material. So when you looked at them on exercise through infrared goggles, you would see these beautiful lines down their arm and showing off like the heat. But I am curious, in that material, what is it that stops the infrared? Is it mass of material?
No, what it is, the holes, the gaps that have been made inside the fibers themselves provide lots and lots and lots of boundaries. So when any infrared is trying to come through at any boundary, you get a certain amount of reflection, certain amount of absorption, certain amount of refraction, etc. But because you've got so many different boundaries and scattering of that infrared, a lot of it ends up being reflected eventually back to the rabbit and not coming out the other side.
So what Gunner Flip-Flop was doing was crushing those layers under the iron and stopping them doing their job.
God, I'd imagine, I suppose if they were made in the same way, yeah. But maybe I'm gonna have to have a look at those, because there are other types of materials that act so like the opposite to black body materials, aren't there?
Yeah.
But I'm interested. I'm going to Google that and find out.
So with the polar bear, then, is this this is obviously an evolutionary offshoot for the adaptation to live in the cold, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Because it's not the fur itself. A lot of people think, well, polar bears are white and it's an adaptation. The fur itself is actually transparent. So, and the only reason it looks white isn't because it's reflecting the snow, it's because it's scattering any light that comes through it.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine it having been developed for any kind of camouflage thing. You know, I think it is all about the infrared.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's very interesting, mate. So last week, guys, I set Cats a task to do. We were talking about knuckleballs, so it's a sport-related thing. And I gave him a mathematical task to try and figure out how many golf balls are in the air at any one time on the planet. And he said he'd get onto it, and he's forgot. So write it down, Cats. Come on, write it. I know you're a busy man. But next week you've got to have,
that will be the Cat's curiosity. I will do it next week as the Cat's curiosity.
Okay. Or detention.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Okay, good stuff. Right, so we'll move on. So next we're talking about the weapons that the ships have. So things like the photon torpedoes, what were the laser things called? Phasers, of course, yeah, phasers. And then the handheld phasers as well, because you could set it on stun or kill, couldn't you? So you said something, Spanners, about the weapons, didn't you? What is it you said?
Well, I've just thought of a new thing, which is a major gripe of mine with a military background, is the fact that the phasers, they would have the handheld phasers that go, bzz, bzz, that's fine. Yeah. And I think it was when the Borg attacked Picard's ship and he did his whole, the line is here and no further.
Yeah.
Right, and they send the troops in, but they all go to this cabinet and they get more assault rifle shaped phasers.
Yeah.
Now, the whole reason you have a long barrel with a weapon is to give your round a chance to spin in a bored barrel to give it accuracy. There's absolutely no benefit to having a longer barrel for a phaser. So that was just, I was like, why are you doing that? I suppose you could slightly argue that you've got two hands to point it.
Better aim.
Huh?
Better aim with it.
Better aim with it. I don't think so. I think it makes no difference at all. And obviously, you would have some kind of auto tracking and auto sensing with that technology as well. And I think that's my main problem with Star Trek technology is it is very plot driven how effective the weapon is.
Yeah.
They clearly have near infinite power from a military point of view. So one episode, you've got a beam that goes and heats up a planet's core and blows it up. And then on the new rebooted Star Trek, you had the Romulans blow up Vulcan with the red what's it. But then there'll be another time they'll be in space, two massive warships, and they're going, okay, load the torpedo. And that goes out, and then they're kind of just going pew 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 pew. Like, use the planet killer. Use the thing that creates a black hole. It's like Harry Potter with the inconsistent spells. There's suddenly a spell that destroys everyone.
Well, I want to ask a question because I'm assuming we're going to just talk about a phaser right now.
Okay.
Not as a real thing, but as some sort of energy discharge weapon.
Yeah.
Now, my knowledge of this is, well, not fantastic, but I'm pretty sure that when you're studying particles and you need particles with lots of energy, like from a cyclotron, how big that thing is and how many times that particle goes round it matters to the ultimate energy it puts out. So I'm just going to wonder, if we have a longer weapon, maybe it's not an accuracy thing. Maybe I'm creating a longer circuit for my particles to go round to gather more energy before they're discharged. And because maybe something handheld has some other kind of thermal limit as to how much you can spin it around that smaller path.
Yeah, there's definite possibility to that. But then we could say, Cats, like, could you handheld something that requires that amount of energy anyway to fire a phaser like that?
God, I mean, even if you could create, the superb insulating casing for the thing, ultimately these phasers, they are firing out subatomic particles.
Yeah.
There is, you've got Newton's third law at some point has got to come into play, and these things don't, those phasers, handheld phasers, they don't weigh a lot. So you would imagine for the energy they put out, you never see any form of recoil or anything like that. Anyone struggling to use one and blowing somebody's head off behind them, you just don't see it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So phasers then are, whether we're talking about the handheld ones or the ship's ones.
So they're definitely possible. I mean, I think you will see it fairly soon in like modern warfare. You will see like ships with lasers or anti-aircraft systems that are using that kind of energy pulse. So it's not unrealistic, I don't think.
Okay, all right. But handheld ones though, are we? Can we say that that's realistic?
I think if you're going to have something that works, like lasers are the closest thing we can think of.
Yeah.
They do make lasers that will burn holes in things. Plasma would be the other thing. I know that you can do like seamless welding with plasma and stuff like that. It's not an impossibility to generate energies that could have impacts like that. But the question is, again, it comes down to an energy source that could create that could create that. That's the bit of technology that's missing.
Okay.
And I don't want to say entirely impossible, but implausible.
Yeah, let's put it in that bracket. The photon torpedoes then that the ships use. I always, when I think about photon torpedoes, I think back to the subtlety of them, and I don't know if you remember. I can't remember which one it was, possibly Generations or First Contact, where the Klingons had stolen Geordie's visor, and they'd put like a little secret camera in there, and they figured out the frequency of the shields of the Enterprise, and they matched that frequency with the photon torpedoes they fired, which went through the shields.
Okay, so that has, I think here they've leaned on like real warfare here, because there is a battle between, say, being detected by radar and the frequency at which your radar system is detecting at is dictated by the size of the squares of the radar array that you use. And so if you are trying to jam that as an attacking aircraft, if you know the size, if you can physically photograph the size of the array, you can then match and modulate your jamming technology to match it. So to me, that washes.
Okay, cool.
I think it's even more interesting. It's almost like anti-aliasing in the sense that they figure out the frequency of the shield, and then they put what they want in between where it can measure, or in this case, where it exists.
Do we?
Sorry,
this
Formula
fine.
One reference.
Yeah. Do we know what a photon torpedo is actually made of? Because a photon is
light.
Yeah, no mass. Matt, do you know this?
Well, I looked it up on the internet.
Okay.
So I don't know. Wiki was the first part of it, so maybe not the most accurate thing, but it said that the torpedo part of the torpedo was actually 1.5 kilograms of matter and 1.5 kilograms of antimatter.
Ah, okay. So we're talking back to the antimatter collision. So could we manage to somehow package that into a weapon? You're the weapon expert, Spanners.
Oh, well, packaging, yeah. You put it into a tube. Do you need to put it into a torpedo-shaped tube and fire it out? Maybe the delivery system here is, I think, what you're talking about. So do we need to put it in a shape that has propulsion? So yes, if it needs to be fired and then carry on by itself, then it could have a torpedo shape. So a torpedo will propel itself through the water, therefore it will have propellers through the back. I guess this would have some kind of space thruster. So you have your warhead and your payload, and then you put it in something that can get it to the destination.
Okay, but taking all that into account, Cats, how would we be able to stop the antimatter from bashing into everything in the delivery system? And
yeah, this is something antimatter containment. When I was talking about positrons at A level, I do remember Googling with the kids, and because one of the kids asked this question, and we had a look, and I do remember Googling. There was some sort of way where, it could sort of be contained, but I can't remember now whether it was using magnetism or what, and I wish I could remember, but I just can't.
I think I'd have to vote for some kind of magnetism.
Yeah, there's one of Dan Brown's novels talks about it, doesn't it? I can't remember which one it was. The one where they go to CERN. Might be
Angels and Demons.
Is it Angels and Demons? Yeah, there's antimatter in that, isn't there?
Mm.
And it's got some sort of a vial with a magnetic. Yeah. Okay. So technology-wise, it's possible. Is that what we're saying?
I
There
guess
is
so.
matter. There is antimatter, and we know it would cause an awful lot of destruction if you let them say hi to each other.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, whatever time period we're in, we have got to throw an amount of debilitating energy at the baddies.
Yeah.
And I think Star Trek do a reasonable job of portraying that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Good stuff. Right. Katz and I spoke about this briefly last week, but we're going to move on to the medical tricorders. So it was just this device that was able to you run it over someone and you'd immediately be able to tell what's wrong with them, what there was to do it. And Katz made the point that they always had just a few LEDs on there and they'd be able to tell you exactly what's wrong with you by just looking at the LEDs.
Such complicated diagnosis as well, isn't it? It's incredible.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah. So what? I mean, that to me would be. So if we managed to replicate that today in the real world, it would be an unbelievable piece of kit, wouldn't it?
Your smartphone, smartwatches. I mean, I don't think we're that far off. I got off the plane in Italy. They took my temperature with the forehead thing. I go to the doctor. They put a little thing on my finger. It tells them the percentage oxygen in my bloodstream.
Yeah.
If you theorize that being a member of the military, they have some kind of, let's say, nanobots running around in their bloodstream. Something like a handheld scanner could probably give you almost everything that is actually represented on that screen very easily. It's literally just picking up the readings from things that are already monitoring your own body's health
inside you. So it's not about packaging everything that all the things that we eat into one box. It's possibly about having, like you say, something inside you which is constantly measuring things inside you, and then you just have to read that with a simple device. Yeah. What do you think, Spanners?
I think they spent too much time concentrating on physical ailments. Never once did it pick up emotional or mental issues. It never said like, you seek validation where it's not necessary. You're experiencing great emotional pain. Here's some vodka. But from a medical point of view, like this would be the ultimate tool for GPs, for like generalist medical experts to then get those readings and make really good diagnoses. It was very much a shortcut in Star Trek, though, wasn't it, Matt?
Yeah, it was, but it's making me think of this lovely episode of The Twilight Zone where a medical kit from the future shows up and you can do surgery and not hurt people. You can cut your arm off and put it back on. It'll do everything for you. And someone's trying to take it to the world. And then right at the demonstration, the people in the future realize that it's been lost and they just turn off the thing. And so he just winds up stabbing himself and dying. Fantastic episode. But this has been a staple of all sorts of television tropes forever. Self-diagnosis, self-healing. And we see it like in The Expanse and all sorts of science fiction. But that's because it's really, really plausible. And the better the technology gets, the more likely it is we're going to see something like it.
Yeah.
So the inconsistency of where the power of technology is applied kind of comes in here as well, because when you look at the dermal regenerator, it's basically like you could just be sliced open from top to bottom and they're like, oh, here's the dermal regenerator. That might be sore for just a little bit. And so there, Star Trek got into the point of, okay, from a plot point of view, do we concentrate on what works for the story, or do we have these concepts on paper? But because they did so many of these concepts so early in Star Trek, and then they've been stuck with them, they're stuck with a lot of things where it's, oh, okay, this is a magic thing that can do anything. And then they have to create situations in which, we're in some kind of magnetic field and the tricorder doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess seeing how far that medicine has come in the last 100 years, it would probably be foolish of us to dismiss something like that to happen in the future.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've already got 3D printed organs.
Yeah.
It's not as far off as people think, I believe.
Okay, cool. That's going in the definite possibility pile then. Right, the last one, we touched on it earlier. We're going to talk about time. So the times that they've messed around with time in the episodes. Now, there's a couple of points that stand out for me. One is the finale of Next Generation, where Picard goes forward in time, back in time. He sees himself. They kind of played on that with Picard, the series, didn't they? Where he's at his vineyard and all of that. And the other episode, which was one of my favourites, is where the Enterprise come up to this, I can't remember what it was now, but Picard passes out, experiences an entire lifetime in his head as this guy who plays a little flute. Then he wakes up after having this whole lifetime, and it's only been, a matter of hours on the ship, and he can still play this flute that he's obviously learned throughout. It was incredible, but how possible is it?
Dan, can I sort of rubbish your premise a little bit? Is that all right? I don't want to be rude. Yep. I know I'm in your house.
No, go.
Well, I don't think the Picard, the lifetime thing where he lives that whole life, grows old and dies, and then he can play the flute, I don't think that has anything to do with time. I think they've just done a data dump into his mind, and he has a perception of time.
Okay. Well, okay, that's fair. That's a fair comment. That's a definite possibility.
Matt's going to disagree with me for this.
I will. Because what I love about that is, because we as human beings experience time in a not standard way. I mean, just ask anyone who's had to sit through Algebra 2 on a rainy afternoon exactly how long 45 minutes is. And they'll say it feels like a lifetime to them.
Not for me.
Or, I don't know about you. I drive. I've had the occasional near crash experience, and a couple of times I have experienced what you would consider time dilation, where everything slows down, where you suddenly experiencing things 10 times slower than you would in normal real life. It's a weird experience, but it can be occasioned. And so we invented devices, watches, and we needed mechanical things. A quartz watch, we rely on the quartz tick. Now we use atomic clocks. But as a human being, all we have is a software in our head to tell us how fast time is passing. And there's things where people have I can't remember the disease they had, but they solved it by giving them L-Dopa. And these people had been in coma since the 50s, and they woke up and they thought it was like 1951, and it was in the 70s.
Wow.
So time, the idea that time passes for us inside our head differently than it passes in a physical universe. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I totally believe you could experience an entire lifetime being unconscious.
Yeah, for sure.
And have only like 8 hours pass in real life.
What about the Nexus spanners from Generations? Do you think that was like a date to dump, or do you think that was actually happening?
Now, no, I think we're meant to believe that he was experiencing all those different times and was able to affect things in all those different times. I'm happy to accept Matt's premise that we can experience the pace of time differently. I'm completely happy with that.
Sure.
However, I respect the direction of time, Matt. Are we on the same page there? I really do think the arrow points one way and one way only.
Yeah.
Yes. And in the physical universe, it absolutely does. But inside our brain, no, not always. And Kurt Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-5, there you go. Billy Pilgrim has come unstuck in time.
I know it's such a good movie device, but I just wish we could just get rid of going back in time from all movies. It never works. It's pointless. You can go back in time in a different timeline, but that then renders everything in your timeline completely irrelevant. You've moved timeline, that's you done. I see existence as a block of time. You've got space-time, the 3 dimensions of height, width, and depth. Now let's imagine that those 3 dimensions are actually 2, just so we can visualize it better, and then add our 3rd/4th dimension of time. We live in this big oblong block of space-time, and we move from one end of the oblong block to the other. And as soon as series insists that you can move in and around that block, it takes me out of it. It's too far. I can do warp, I can do holodecks, I can do androids that love and for some reason need to engage in sex. But once we go backwards in time, I check out.
Okay, so Cats, did they mess up? Did they mess with time too much then? Star Trek.
I think from the point of view of entertainment, right, let alone physics, I agree with what Spanners has just said there. Once you've introduced time travel, if it's a standalone movie and that's your answer to the problem, fine. Okay. But if you're going to have series after series, and you're going to try and create drama and tension, and you've just got this get out clause that if something goes wrong, you just hop back in time and fix it. And then sometimes you choose to do it and sometimes you choose not to, it ruins it, I think.
Okay. So they played it a bit too much.
I would agree as a plot device. I don't know if any of you remember the series Heroes. It was about 2 seasons long.
Yeah.
And the first season was great until one of the heroes who had the power of not being killed magically passed that on to all the other heroes. And then the series was over because there was no more tension left.
Yeah.
There was nothing because everyone was invulnerable and that was just the end of it. And so, I would agree from a writing point of view. If you're going to use time travel like that, it either needs to be inherent to the danger that you face and a problem that has to be solved, or it has to be something that can only be accessed under super rare, incredible circumstances. Otherwise, you just find yourself sitting there going, well, why don't they hit the rewind button and try it again?
So here's a question then. Did The Next Generation use Q too much in terms of getting them out of situations, or in terms of in episodes, or he just seemed to be around quite a lot, didn't he, Q?
Yeah, and I don't want to keep strangling this turkey. That's a real phrase. I don't want to keep strangling this turkey, but again, they've fallen for the anything can happen. But they made Q up, as the kids say. They made him overpowered immediately, and then they liked the character actor. He was a good character actor. So, yes, he did get used too much. The absolute best Q episode, though, if I may diverge, is the one where one of the Q Continuum wanted to die. And
yes.
He was fed up with being alive forever, and they went to this dusty road track, which was their home, or a metaphor for their home. And just one of the best pieces of writing in Star Trek ever was when he was talking about why he would want to die when there's infinite possibilities. And they look at this road with a petrol station. He says, I've been the scarecrow, I've been the garage, I've even been the road, I've been that rat, I've been the tumbleweed, I've done everything. And it was just a beautiful poetic insight into life and the finiteness of it being beautiful in itself.
Yeah. My favorite Q moment is where he made them all members of the Robin Hood gang, and Worf said, "Sir, I will not be a merry man." That cracked me up for about 5 minutes.
Was it not? I am not a merry man.
I am. Yeah. Oh dear. Right. Okay. So the time stuff is all possibly used a bit too much. We've spoken about time before in Red Dwarf, didn't we, about being some sort of a possibility way in the future.
I vote no. If that's, are we voting? Is that how it works? I vote no on the time thing.
We can vote. Did we vote no on Red Dwarf? I think we did, didn't we? We did, yeah. Okay, we'll vote no for it. We'll vote no for Red Dwarf. We'll vote no for time. Okay, cool. Well, that has been a brilliant discussion on how plausible the science is in Star Trek. Look, it's Guess the Conspiracy time, and these two have got form, Cats. They've won it once already, so let's play. So, guys, since you were last on, the score has changed. It is now 10-9 to myself and Cats. So, if you get this one, you're pulling it level.
Wait a minute. Who's been letting the side down for the guests?
What do you mean? The guests were miles behind by the time when you did it.
Oh, right.
The guests have been pulling it back.
Comeback story.
Yeah, you're the comeback story. So, I think you might have even kicked the comeback off. So, this would be brilliant if you could get it to 10-all, because we're ending the game soon, and it's first to 11. I'm not just saying that because if we win tonight, we win. We have discussed this over 2 episodes. Go on.
Once again, it is abhorrent to me that me and Matt are on the same team, and I would like some kind of judgment as to which of us did better, even within the team.
Fine, that's fine. But last time, it was we did the one on the. Do you remember the guy who thought the pizza box was Masonic, and there was loads of images all over it.
Oh,
and, yeah. Spanners had a blooming relative who was a Mason, so he knew all that stuff. And that
Master Mason.
Yeah, so... And then I was like, oh, God, the flat earthers are going to listen to this, and I'm associated with a Mason. It's all over for me. Right, so here we go. 3 conspiracy theories. 1 is real in that people believe it, and 2 are fabricated by Katz and myself. Here we go. Number 1, Coke and Pepsi are actually the same drink. It's a test in subliminal advertising to see if the colour of the can affects the taste. That's the first conspiracy theory. Number 2, the Earth exists inside a giant crater. That's the second one. And number 3, bacteria are not a thing, and they exist only to control the population. The idea of them exists to control the population. There you go. That's your 3.
Okay, so we've got 3 to pick from. Matt, do you want me to go first? I've got a hot take on all 3.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so my early thinking is, and what we're doing here is establishing which one is a real conspiracy theory that is out there. So the most believable one for me straight away is the bacteria one.
Okay.
So bacteria doesn't exist. Now, my mind is now turned to straight chiropractic and acupuncture and what's orthopedic? No, osteopathy. And a lot of the backbone of that is actually there are no germs. So they deny germ theory, and they say that all the ailments of the body are from misalignments in your muscular skeletal system.
Right. Okay.
I have a hilarious anecdote.
Shoot.
Regarding that. My daughter had to write a final paper or do a final presentation in her yoga class. And some of the topics that came up were very woo topics.
Woo.
And my daughter was apparently grumbling infinitely about the concept of foot reflexology.
Oh my God.
Brilliant.
She picked herbalism. She says, at least there's some vague science there somewhere.
Yeah.
But it was just like, it was a proud moment for me as a dad. Because I wasn't there when she was complaining about the lack of science in all of this.
Brilliant.
So when it comes to alt med, like all bets are off. Like I can definitely believe that someone thinks bacteria doesn't exist, Matt.
Yeah, no. Now, also interesting to me is the Coke Pepsi thing, because you may not know this, but in a previous life, I was a bartender. And one thing we absolutely did at our bar was we bought a beer that was not Budweiser, but cheaper. I think it was Schaefer, and ran it through the Budweiser tap.
Oh.
And I tended bar for the better part of a year. And in that entire year, exactly one person bought a pint of that and then said to me, "Are you sure this is Budweiser?"
Mate, 100% can agree with that because, okay, so to start with, I swear that I drink a lot of the sugar-free Cokes and Pepsis, and I think I could tell the difference between Coke Zero and Pepsi Max. I think I could, but the one thing I do know is that out of a cold tin, it definitely tastes a lot different than out of a bottle, and I'm absolutely sure of that and happy to be proved wrong. I had a boss that was absolutely adamant that he was a sommelier and that he could tell all the different whiskies apart. And he was really getting a lot of mileage at the bar going on. This one's got the aroma of this and whatever. And I just full on called him and I just went, I think that's balls, mate. I think that, and let's test it. We tested it and he didn't get a single one right. He was horribly embarrassed. I never got promoted.
Oh.
So it's an interesting thing, perception. I remember being in the 5th grade, 6th grade, 4th grade, something like that. And they came up and they said, "Here, put on this blindfold, take a bite of this apple." And I took a bite of it and I was like, spit it out. I'm like, that's not an apple. It was a potato. It's an experiment they did on kids because the textures and things are similar. Some people are really sensitive to that. I had a friend who worked in a wine store. And they were talking about vodkas and they were like, yeah, you know, mostly, but he said there was one rep. He said, we did a blind pour of 12 different vodkas and he told us each one, like he was dead on with each of them. So there are people who do have those senses, but I think it's much rarer than a lot of people would have you believe.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And Yeah. Okay. So the Earth and the crater one. Now, Dan, what's your criteria here? Does it have to be an established conspiracy theorist, or is it that one guy called Derek in Slough who thinks the Earth is in a crater?
My criteria is that for any of these conspiracy theories, that there is at least a small group of people that believe it.
Okay. So this one's too ridiculous for me. So is it resting in a crater? Is the Antarctic, is that the bottom? And that's the thing on the top, and it's really finely balanced? If this one's true, I lose all faith in humanity unless it's such a big crater that it's somehow floating in it, unless is that connected with flat Earth? Matt, I'm going with my bacteria still. The Earth in a crater is not moving me.
Yeah, there's so many weird Earth conspiracies. It's flat, it's diagonal, it's this, it's that, it's the center of the universe.
Yeah.
It's just like, so Earth in a crater is a good one to draw you in, but really, if you were going to be real about it, it would be the inside of the Earth is hollow. I would bet that is I bet there are people who absolutely believe that is true.
There's loads of hollow
being
earthers.
lied to about it.
Loads of hollow earthers.
So I would agree with you. I think that's a distraction. Coke and Pepsi being the same, I don't know. I feel like I can taste the difference. I think that'd be a hard sell. But that said, my experience bartending is like, well, yeah, you could probably also get away with it with a lot of people too. But the bacteria thing also struck me as being the most believable of the three.
The most believable that someone would think it's a conspiracy. Whatever happens here, I'm going to do my Pepsi Max Coke Zero taste test to see if I can actually tell the difference, because I thought I could. Happy to be corrected. Matt, my vote is the bacteria one. But
bacteria, you going for that?
It's a team game, Matt. So
are you happy with that? Happy with bacteria?
Okay. You're much older, so you should decide.
Oh, no. I'm going to agree with you. So therefore, if we're wrong, it's going to be entirely your fault.
Okay.
Bacteria, Bob.
Here we go.
Final answer.
Here we go. Final answer.
Oh, yeah.
We've done it, cats. We have done it. Quite possibly, that is one of the best ones in that it's got the people talking and not sure about all three.
Yes.
Normally they discard one straight away and say it's out of these two. You went through all of those really well. It's the crater, guys. It's the crater.
I've lost faith in
It is the crater. So there are people out there that genuinely believe, and you're right, mate. It's a massive crater. It's a massive crater that they believe.
It's so big that we're floating in the crater. So it's also a zero gravity crater.
Exactly. So we don't know what the crater's in. We don't know where that crater is, but they believe that the Earth exists inside a crater. What's
the crater a part of? A giant planet?
I don't know. We don't know. But it does. There is an offshoot to flat Earth, because some flat earthers think that there's a giant. What is it, cats? Like a giant ice ball or something, and then the Earth is just a tiny little bit in the top of the ice ball or something like that. So it's a bit of an offshoot to that. Cats came up with the Coke and Pepsi one, and I came up with the bacteria one.
Really good. Both of them really good.
And we've done it, mate. We've done it. 11-9. We are victorious. I was worried that you two were going to get it.
Slightly in that you have found the most ridiculous conspiracy theory I've ever heard and combined it with two perfectly plausible conspiracy theories.
That's the game, mate. That's the game. Come on. Right. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining us once again. Really appreciate you coming on. Go on, mate.
What was that?
You want to say something?
Oh, no, I was just pointing at my screen.
Oh, but yes. Right. So
I thought you were going to organically plug my website rather than making it now awkwardly seem like I'm some kind of attention.
You saw the notes. It says Roundup Show and social media plugs. Read it.
I never learned to read.
Yeah, anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining us. You can find these two at missedapex.net. Honestly, they do a fantastic.
So kind of you to think of that.
They do a fantastic Formula One podcast.
All on your own.
Formula One race cars. If you like race cars, come find us.
Please do go and check them out. They do a great show. Cats is obviously on YouTube, Conspiracy Cats. I'm obviously on YouTube, SciManDan. Cats, have you got anything special coming up after the fantastic Flat Earth smashing?
Yeah, I'm going to do a roundup of the response from the Flat Earth community this week, and looking forward to that.
Excellent, good stuff. I have got, like I said, I'm kind of going over what you did with the photo, and tomorrow, or which when you hear this will be yesterday, I have got a guy who has found some like giant stones and thinks that they are bones of giant people. That's coming up on Tinfoil Tuesday. Check it out. But for now, we are done. Next week, we have got... I don't know who we've got next week. Who have we got next week, Kat? Oh, did I send it?
I don't know.
Bloody hell. Right, hang on. I'll tell you who we've got next week. It's episode 24. And, it might be Ranty, mightn't it? I asked you about this. I've swapped something. Yeah, so Ranty is the guy who has flipped from flat Earth to globe Earth. We're going to get him on. We're going to chat about how he went through it. And I've got some questions for him as well, because he wants to accuse me of buying my subscribers. And I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. No, I'm only joking. I'm just going to ask him if he thinks I am. Anyway, we are done. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great week. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
La la